Welkom terug hier by die groot ontbyt. Dit is nou my voorreg om vanoggend te gesels en ons praat met John Schlapobersky, psigoterapeut en skrywer oor hierdie boek When They Came From Me en geskryf 52 jaar na hy aangehou is in deur die apartheidsregering. So John, a big welcome.
Thank you so much.
And what's the time in London now?
It's 5:45 in the morning.
Oh, so we're just 1 hour I think, in front. Thanks for joining us, and I just want to introduce you as a world-renowned author and pioneer of group psychotherapy, and your first book your book From the Couch to the Circle, another book, won awards for excellence in psychodynamic group therapy. So we're going to get to the book, but just to give the people a little bit of background about yourself. You were raised in Swaziland, Jewish South Africa. It's just, just a little bit of your upbringing.
Of course. I was born in Johannesburg, in Berea, and raised first in Greenside, then in Oaklands. When I was 11, we moved to Swaziland, and I spent my teenage years there, and came back to South Africa for university, first at UCT, and then at Wits. I was in my second year at Wits when I was arrested.
Mm. And just the background of the arrest, and it was an influential family. Like your father's brother was the mayor of Johannesburg, and it was actually very innocent. You loved poetry, and I don't know if it was the confusion, but you had black friends, and just the love of poetry. And how did it happen? Because you were just taken, and we're going to get to the ordeal because it was 55 days of hell, and you wrote about this now. But just what happened just before the arrest?
Well, you've used the word innocent, and I have to say, in our opposition to apartheid at that time, we were not innocent. We were oppositional. But I was not involved in any organized illegal activity. There was none that I could be reached by or could make contact with because the security lid on the country was so tight at that time. All forms of underground activity of the kind that had led to the Rivonia trial had really been destroyed. But we were doing what we could to oppose the system. And not long before my arrest, I'd been to the meeting of the Liberal Party at which they disbanded themselves because the legislation brought into action preceding the disbandment made it illegal for a political party to have members from more than one race. And rather than comply, the Liberal Party disbanded, and I attended the concluding meeting of this party, at which Alan Paton spoke most beautifully about the need to organize, but to do so outside the context of institutional life in order to remain within the law. And that was my basic position.
And you were really young. It was, I think, just before your 21st birthday. And being detained, it must be frightening because, we all know it was a tough police force and secret service and everything. But you were really made believe that they're going to take you to prison and you can see a lawyer. And it just went south from there.
Yeah. Well, there was a wave of arrests going on in the winter of 1969. The arrests led eventually to the trial of Winnie Mandela, Joyce Sikhakhane, and the 20 co-accused. It was a trial that took place in the December of that year, December 1969. The judge threw the case out of court because he said, "You're providing me with no evidence except the testimony of people who've obviously been tortured. But no trouble to the police. As the judge made his ruling, the police rearrested everybody in the dock, put them back into solitary confinement for another 6 months, and brought them to trial all over again with the same evidence but under different charges. And that too was thrown out. So that was the level of responsibility held by those accused. I was on the periphery of that whole story. So in the case of people like myself, there was even less evidence. So they were looking to cook the books, actually. There was no security demand for the conduct they deployed.
So now, 52 years after being detained, you wrote this book. Why so long?
It's a good question. And I think your viewers, and I'd like to say greetings to everybody watching, Groete allemaal. Your viewers would probably need to read the book themselves to see why it took me so long. What I was put through, I very nearly didn't survive. And when I say I very nearly didn't survive, I mean there were periods when I thought they were going to kill me. There were other periods when I thought they were trying to get me to kill myself. So this was no small ordeal, and it was concluded with a form of semi-legal deportation. So I turned out to be such an embarrassment for the veiligheidspolisie that it was important to bring closure to the publicity that surrounded my detention so that they could get on with the trial of the others. And they did so by making arrangements, really with the help of my parents, to get me to Israel. I was there for some period. Then I came on to the UK, and I started a new life here at the age of 22.
And I really want to motivate people to read this book. It's somewhere between a diary, academic, and historical book. I really enjoyed it. And just for context, but they must go look for it. When you speak about suicide, it's like just leaving a razor blade, tempting you. It's just amazing. But you call it a toilet paper diaries. Just yourself going back to that memories. And we're going to talk about standing for hours or basically more than a day on one brick. The way you were tortured. Was it therapeutic for you even after all these years?
The writing process was an ordeal. The period in prison lasted 55 days. This writing process lasted 2 years, so it's a long time more in the writing than in the experience itself. I hope it will prove therapeutic. There were some grim periods in the writing, but I was notably helped by the support and the love of my family, my partner, and by friends in South Africa who helped to see me through the drafting process. You'll have seen, your viewers will have seen that the foreword to the book is written by Justice Albie Sachs, and he provided me with a foil and a reference point, both from the books he had written in the years before and from his reading of my manuscript as it emerged.
I want to talk about it's such a bad, dark, and beautiful story, making someone stand on a brick, trying to break you physically. It's just, I couldn't believe that someone can stand on a brick that long, and the pain it starts to cause, and hallucinations and everything. But also you said you kind of made a friend with that brick. You talked to it and said, listen, don't hurt me too much. And that's a beautiful story.
Well, when I was arrested, they'd conducted a dragnet operation right through the country, and they were interrogating people in order to detain others. It was a major operation which, I was told afterwards, had little to do with the security of the country and more to do with the fragmentation of popular feeling amongst Afrikaans people. It was a time of the split between the verkrampters and the verligters. And I was told in London the next year that Forster had given instructions to the A-team of the Veiligheidspolisie, that is Major Junie and Major Johan Kuier, to conduct a major operation and lay their hands on every black, coloured or Indian intellectual who looked like they could be a threat. And they were going to demonstrate die rooi or die swart gevaar through this mass wave of interrogation and a big show trial. They turned out to be on a misguided pursuit because there was no content or substance to what they were about. They came to me quite a long way down the line, and my association with these events was through the world of poetry. I was on my way to becoming a doctor. I still write. My identity as a writer was so shaken by what took place, and I lost my home and my context in the process. And for poetry to flourish, you need to be on home ground. So it hasn't really flourished in my hands. Other things have flourished. And my practice as a clinician, a psychotherapist, and a theoretician. So I didn't want to come forward with a book about this horror and present myself to the world as a celebrity in suffering. I wanted first to establish my standing and reputation on my own terms, which is what I've done with my previous book called From the Couch to the Circle. It's a study of a particular model of group psychotherapy. So I came out to write this book with a sense of obligation to the past, a wish to share something with my children and grandchildren whilst I still could, because I protected them from the full horror of the detail I lived through, but also to make a forthright statement about the state's sanctioned use of terror.
Yes, John, I'm just going to stop you there. We're out of time for the segment, but we're going to chat to you just after the 7 o'clock news. A lot of questions I still have on this side. So jy kan ingeskakel bly vir jou 7 uur nuus en dan gesels ons verder met John. As jy net ingeskakel het, ons gesels met John Schlapobersky en dit is oor sy boek en When They Came For Me. Hy is aangehou as student vir 55 dae, soos hulle noem, solitary confinement, en ook sommer direk van die tronk af Engeland toe gestuur met 'n vliegtuig, maar hy het 'n ongelooflike loopbaan gebou. Welcome back, John.
Thank you.
Before we get to what the rest of your life, I just wanted, it was very interesting for me to see your relationship, and I call it relationship with faith. You had a Bible that you went through, and you grew up Jewish, and you are Jewish, if I'm correct. But even reading the Gospels, but it was you find it was like comforting some of the stories, but you had a unique relationship with faith. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I'd be pleased to. I had a religious upbringing, and by the time I was arrested, I had left religious life. I was leading a completely secular life, and I had in prison no living sense of faith to guide me. That came afterwards, and it came partly from a sense of gratitude that I survived this ordeal, and then with the birth of my daughter, who is now 48 years old. We've just celebrated her birthday. Those were the events that led me back to an active Jewish life and a sense of faith in God's presence. In the cell, I had my little school Bible, and the only reason I had it was because when the Veiligheidspolisie took me from university, they arrested me at Wits on a Friday morning, unexpectedly, with no warning, and they took me to my home. They took the place apart. They were looking for things. One of them found this little school Bible on my bookshelf, and he said to me in English, take this and keep it close to you. It may be all you've got in the place you're going to. Now, there was a sense of dread in this, and I thought he was threatening me. But he needn't have done this. And I've often wondered who this man was and what his name might have been. I think it's likely he's still alive. He wasn't that much older than me. So I'd like him to know I'm grateful, because it was my comfort, it was my solace, and it was also the place in which I kept a record of what was happening to me. As you will have seen, I drew up a diary in the Bible, and I monitored what was going on. It helped to keep me orientated. In the mornings, I would read from the Gospels, because there is comfort and a sense of present hope in all four of the Gospels. I couldn't bear to read from the Old Testament, my Bible, in the mornings, when the sense of oppression was at its most acute. So I read from the Old Testament in the afternoons, and I familiarized myself intimately with certain books and passages, in particular the Psalms, the Proverbs, also the Song of Solomon and Ecclesiastes.
And then I want to talk about your career after this ordeal. And it feels, I mean, you did amazing work and with psychodynamic group therapy and as a psychotherapy. Do you think, maybe a difficult question, but do you think going through this years ago, it was a bit of destiny? Because you helped so many people in terms of interrogation and torture and people that's fleeing their countries. Do you have a sense that it was destiny?
Well, I can't say destiny exactly, because who knows what steps guide us along the way. But yes, I'm not sure if I pronounce your name accurately. It's Jorgen.
Your name.
Your name.
Yes.
So thank you for asking that question. It's a touching and perhaps also healing question. I landed in the UK lost, confused, and heartsore, really. And it took me a long time to find my feet here. I was denied the opportunity to come home again. Getting back to South Africa when there was threat to the health of my parents. They got ill and different family problems arose. There was a lot going on that was difficult. In the aftermath of my arrest, it was such a trauma for us all, really, because when an organization like the security police, the Veiligheidspolisie, arrest one person, it's an attack on the whole family. And my parents' marriage didn't survive, and then my brother and sister came to live with me in London, and then my other brother, who had been living in Israel, came to join me too. So it was a challenge to support us all, to maintain a home, to see to my siblings' education. It took me a long time to find my own professional way, and when I did so, it was as a psychotherapist. There's my family. At the back, I'm standing on the far right, and between us is my brother David, who's a potter who lives in Swellendam, and on the other side of David is my brother Colin, who lives in London. In the front row is my sister Marion, and beside her is our late mother Ruth. This was taken not long before she passed away.
And then I just want to find out, there's this beautiful, I see it as a love story, really reading in between the lines, the love of your life, that thread since such a young age, having someone like that in your life for such a long time.
Sorry, Jorgen, just clarify who you're...
So, no, just like the love story, of your wife and, having someone like that, because it's amazing during that time onto where you're now? Just having someone like that.
Well, she stood by me. My partner and I, Janet, we did something very unconventional. I was an undergraduate and I'd only just turned 21, and we set up a home together in Johannesburg, which was a very unconventional thing to do. We weren't married, and I don't think we had plans to marry at that time. But she stood by me through the detention. She came to visit me on one occasion. In fact, it was a threat against her arrest that brought my own interrogation to an end. She joined me later in Israel, and then we settled in the UK. And we have our daughter, who's now 47. And Janet's second child, Josh, is my stepson. He's going to be 40 soon. And we have between us 3 grandchildren. So we have remained lifelong friends, but our marriage didn't last. We were not in love, on a long-term basis. And had it not been for my detention, I don't know if we would have still been together. But her loyalty and commitment were real and sincere, as indeed mine was towards her. And we've flourished in the love we share for our children. I've been married again since then, and I'm pleased to say I am in a loving partnership with a woman I'm committed to now. But we have a sense of family together, and at my book launch, we were very honoured to have my former wife Janet with us, and she has a place of honour in the life of my family.
We've got less than a minute, so a short answer. If you could look Johan Coetzee in the eye, what would you tell him today?
I would tell him that you were wrong. He believed that they could control the country through intelligence and terror. And I would say intelligence and terror bring nothing but terror. And you've been proved completely wrong.
Oh, that's a good one. John, thank you so much, and thanks for all the people. I don't even think we understand in a career spanning over 50 years how many people you've helped, and we motivate people to read your book, and thanks for writing it.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Enjoy London. Bye. En dit was John Schlapobersky. Jy moet gerus hierdie boek koop. Dit is regtig baie fascinerend.